First Contact Protocol. Commander Jack Harrison stood at the entrance of the Galactic Defense Academy's main hall, trying not to feel like an exhibit in a zoo. The massive crystalline structure towered above him, its transparent walls refracting the light of 3 different suns. Around him, beings of all shapes, sizes, and compositions hurried past, some floating, others crawling, a few even phase-shifting through solid matter. Commander Harrison, welcome to the Academy. A tall, willowy figure approached him, moving with the fluid grace characteristic of the Sylphy species. I am Dean Vaxra. We are pleased to have Earth's first instructor join our ranks. The slight hesitation before pleased told Harrison everything he needed to know about how the Academy's administration really felt about his appointment. Earth had only joined the Galactic Federation 3 years ago, and the term Deathworlder still followed humans around like a bad reputation. Thank you for the opportunity, Dean Vaxra, Harrison replied, carefully modulating his voice to avoid startling the notoriously sensitive Sylphy. I look forward to contributing to the Academy's prestigious training program. Yes, well. Vaxra's iridescent wings flickered with barely concealed discomfort. Your unique expertise in survival tactics will certainly be interesting for our cadets. Harrison suppressed a smile. Interesting was one way to put it. He'd reviewed the Academy's survival training protocols during his journey here. What they considered extreme survival conditions would barely qualify as camping weather back on Earth. The dean led him through winding corridors, past lecture halls where holographic displays showed everything from quantum mechanics to xenobiology. Students of various species parted before them like water, their whispered conversations and transmitted thoughts creating a constant background hum. This will be your classroom, Vaxra announced, gesturing to a large circular chamber. We've reinforced the environmental controls to accommodate your physical requirements. Harrison nodded, noting the heavy-duty gravity generators and atmosphere processors. Standard gravity here was about 0.7 Earth normal, and the atmosphere was closer to what you'd find at 3,000 meters elevation back home. Your first class begins in 1 standard hour, the dean continued. You have 12 students assigned to your survival basics course. We've adjusted their environmental suits to protect them from any unexpected demonstrations. As Vaxra glided away, Harrison began setting up his teaching materials. He'd fought hard for this position, convincing Earth's diplomatic corps that having a human instructor at the Academy would help integrate humanity into the galactic community. Now he just had to prove that humans had something valuable to teach. His students began filtering in early, curiosity overwhelming their apparent apprehension. A crystalline petrovan floated in on anti-grav fields, its faceted body refracting light across the room. 2 Meridi slithered in on their serpentine lower bodies, their upper torsos humanoid but covered in iridescent scales. A group of Erythi flew in, their gossamer wings barely visible, while Aquantium simply phased into existence in one of the seats. Harrison waited until precisely the scheduled time before stepping to the center of the room. The quiet murmurs and electromagnetic communications ceased immediately. Welcome to Advanced Survival Tactics, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the room's acoustic enhancement field. I'm Commander Harrison, and yes, I'm a human. Yes, I'm from Earth. And yes, that means I'm a Deathworlder. He could see them tense at the term, some literally crystallizing in place. But that's exactly why I'm here. Because what you consider extreme survival conditions, we consider a normal Tuesday. And in a galaxy full of unexpected dangers, that kind of experience might just save your lives. Harrison activated the room's holographic display, showing an image of Earth's Rocky Mountains. Today, we're going to start with something simple: how to survive in what you would classify as class 4 hostile conditions. Back home, we call this spring break. A nervous titter ran through the class. Harrison grinned, showing just a few too many teeth. By the end of this course, you'll understand why humans don't just survive in hostile environments, we thrive in them. And more importantly, you'll learn how to do the same. The real challenge, Harrison knew, wouldn't be teaching them survival skills. It would be getting them to understand that what they saw as terrifying limitations could become their greatest strengths. Just as humanity's Deathworld origins had shaped them into one of the most adaptable species in the galaxy. As he began his lecture, Harrison couldn't help but feel that this class would be the beginning of something much bigger than simple survival training. He was right, but not in any way he could have predicted. Trial by fire. 3 weeks into his teaching assignment, Harrison was beginning to see progress. His students no longer flinched when he demonstrated Earth-normal physical activities, and some had even started showing genuine enthusiasm for their training exercises. Today's lesson would push them further than ever before. A survival situation rarely announces itself in advance, Harrison explained, pacing before his class in the Academy's environmental simulation chamber. That's why today's exercise will be different. No preparation, no warning. Just like real life. The Petrovan student, KYRX, chimed nervously, their crystalline body vibrating at a frequency Harrison had learned to associate with anxiety. Different how, Commander? Harrison's response was cut off by a sudden, violent shuddering that ran through the entire Academy structure. The lights flickered, and the environmental controls stuttered momentarily. His students looked around in confusion, but Harrison's combat-trained instincts were already screaming danger. That wasn't part of the lesson, he muttered, accessing the facility's security feeds through his neural interface. The displays showed static. Everyone, environmental suits on. Now. But Commander, Zalare, one of the Meridi students, protested, Academy protocols state that in case of environmental system fluctuations, we should proceed to the nearest safety chamber N. The second impact hit harder than the first. The crystalline walls of the Academy groaned under stress they were never designed to handle. Harrison's neural interface flashed with warning signals before going completely dark. New protocol, Harrison barked, falling easily into his old combat commander voice. When your human instructor tells you to suit up, you suit up. Move. This time they obeyed, years of Academy discipline kicking in. Harrison did a quick head count as his students activated their environmental protection systems. 12 suits activated, 12 students protected. Good. Sir, the Quantuum student, Nexus, phased partially through a wall and back. The safety chambers are sealed. All communications are down. And there are entities entering the Academy through breaches in the lower levels. Harrison's jaw tightened. What kind of entities? Unknown, Nexus replied, their form flickering with distress. They appear to be using some form of phase shift technology similar to my species, but wrong. Unstable. Hostile. A distant explosion answered his question, followed by the distinct sound of weapons fire. Harrison made a quick decision. His students were untrained for combat, but they were also the only ones he could guarantee weren't compromised. Listen up, he commanded. Everything we've been training for. This is the real thing. We're going to move as a unit to my office. I keep an emergency cache of Earth-rated survival gear there. Standard formation, KYRX and Nexus on point since you're hardest to hurt, Arathi providing high cover. But we're students, one of the Arathi, Pix, protested. We're not authorized to. Authorization granted, Harrison cut them off. This is now a Class 10 survival situation. And what's the first rule of survival in hostile conditions? Stay alive, they responded in unison, the phrase drilled into them over weeks of training. Second rule. Keep others alive. Third rule. Rules 1 and 2 supersede all other rules, they finished, some showing hints of confidence now. Harrison nodded approvingly. Good. Now, we're about to find out if my crazy Deathworlder training methods actually work. Stay close, stay quiet, and remember, humans didn't just survive on a death world. We became the apex predators of our entire planet. Today, I'm going to show you why. They moved through the Academy's corridors like shadows, Harrison's training showing in every careful step and coordinated movement. The sounds of chaos grew closer, but his students remained focused, each using their unique abilities to contribute to the group's survival. KYRX's crystalline body refracted light around them, providing limited camouflage. Nexus phased ahead to scout, while the Erythai maintained an aerial view through the transparent ceiling panels. The Meridi's sensitive electromagnetic reception gave early warning of approaching energy signatures. They were halfway to Harrison's office when they encountered their first hostile. A shadowy figure phased partially through a wall, its form unstable and shifting, wielding what appeared to be a modified phase rifle. Before the entity could fully materialize, Harrison was moving. His students watched in amazement as their instructor demonstrated exactly why humans were considered dangerous. Despite the lower gravity, despite the thin atmosphere, Harrison's Earth-evolved muscles launched him forward with explosive power. The hostile's phase rifle passed harmlessly through the space where Harrison had been. Harrison's fist, enhanced by his environmentally sealed gauntlet, did not pass harmlessly through the hostile. There was a sound like static electricity combined with breaking glass, and the entity collapsed into a puddle of inert phase matter. "Commander," Zalare whispered, all three sets of eyes wide. "That was basic human hand-to-hand combat," Harrison replied calmly, though his heart was racing with the familiar combat rush. "When you live on a death world, you learn to hit first, hit hard, and hit where it counts." He gestured to the puddle. "Even phase-shifted entities have to partially solidify to interact with our plane of existence. That's their vulnerable moment." His students stared at him with new understanding. This wasn't their strict but patient instructor anymore. This was a Deathworlder in his element, and for the first time, they were grateful for it. "We need to move," Harrison continued. "That one was alone, but they rarely are. Time to show me if you've actually been paying attention in class. Remember your environment assessment protocols?" They nodded, and Harrison allowed himself a grim smile. He'd fought to get this teaching position to prove humans could contribute to galactic society. He'd never imagined he'd end up proving it quite like this. As they moved deeper into the chaos engulfing the Academy, Harrison couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a random attack. Someone or something had specifically targeted the galaxy's premier military training facility. The question was why. He had a feeling they were about to find out, whether they wanted to or not. The hidden enemy. Harrison's office looked exactly as he'd left it, which immediately put him on edge. In his experience, when everything was going wrong, anything that looked perfectly normal was usually the most dangerous thing in the room. Nexus, phase scan. KYRX, crystalline resonance check. Everyone else, standard security positions, he ordered, his students moving with practiced precision that would have made him proud under less dire circumstances. Clear on phase spectrum, Nexus reported, their form rippling with concentration. Crystalline structures normal, KYRX chimed. No hidden stress patterns or embedded devices. Harrison nodded and pressed his palm against a seemingly ordinary section of wall. A hidden panel slid open, revealing an arsenal that made his students gasp. Not standard Academy weapons, these were Earth-made, designed to function under any conditions. "Sir," Zalare spoke up, her scales shifting colors with anxiety, "those aren't regulation." "Neither is attacking the Academy," Harrison replied, distributing equipment with practiced efficiency. "These are survival tools, rated for Earth conditions. Which means they'll work anywhere, against anything." He paused at his desk, activating a hidden terminal that ran on an isolated system. "Now let's see what we're really dealing with." The screen flickered to life, showing security feeds that the main system had missed. The images revealed a coordinated attack pattern. The phase-shifted hostiles weren't random raiders, they were conducting a systematic sweep of the Academy, focusing on specific sections. "They're looking for something," Pix observed from their aerial vantage point near the ceiling. "Or someone." Harrison's expression darkened as he noticed a pattern in their search grid. They're working their way toward the secure archives. That's where the Academy keeps its most sensitive data, including detailed information about every member species' strengths and weaknesses. But why? One of the Erathi students asked. That information is classified for protection, not, they stopped, understanding dawning in their luminescent eyes. Not for protection, Harrison finished grimly. For defense. The archives contain detailed analysis of every species' vulnerabilities. In the wrong hands, it would be a blueprint for genocide. A heavy silence fell over the room. The galaxy had enjoyed centuries of relative peace under the Federation, but old prejudices died hard. There were still those who believed that different species couldn't coexist, that the strong should dominate the weak. So what do we do? KYRX asked, their crystalline form vibrating with determination rather than fear now. Harrison smiled. This was why he'd pushed so hard to teach at the Academy, not just to show what humans could do, but to show what different species could accomplish together. We're going to beat them at their own game, he said. They think they know every species' weaknesses. Well, they don't know that I've spent the last 3 weeks teaching you how to turn those weaknesses into strengths. He pulled up a schematic of the Academy's layout. The archives have triple redundant security systems, but they're designed to keep people out, not in. If we can get there first, we can trap them inside their own target. But the archives are on the other side of the Academy, Zalare pointed out. Through territory they already control. True, Harrison agreed. Which is why we're going to do something they'll never expect. We're going to take the direct route. The direct. Nexus's form flickered in surprise. You mean straight through the central atrium? That's completely exposed. Exactly. They'll be watching all the tactical approaches, all the clever routes. Nobody would be crazy enough to walk straight through the middle of their operation. Harrison's grin turned predatory. Nobody except a Deathworlder and his well-trained team. He began laying out the plan, and as his students listened, their initial skepticism turned to cautious excitement. It was exactly the kind of insane strategy that humans were famous for, so crazy it might actually work. KYRX, you'll use your crystalline structure to refract light around us, creating a partial camouflage field. Nexus, you'll phase shift at the first sign of trouble, drawing their attention. Erathi team, you'll provide high cover and distraction. Meridi, your electromagnetic sensitivity will give us early warning of any ambush. Harrison checked his Earth-rated combat suit's seals. Remember your training. Remember what I taught you about human survival principles. Rule 1. Sometimes the obvious solution is the right solution, they chorused. Rule 2. The best defense is a good offense. And Rule 3. Never let them see you coming until it's too late. Harrison nodded approvingly. Time to show the galaxy what happens when you combine human audacity with the best qualities of every species in the Federation. Move out. As they left the relative safety of his office, Harrison felt a surge of pride in his students. They moved with purpose now, each using their natural abilities in concert with their teammates. Maybe that had been the point all along, not just teaching them to survive, but teaching them to thrive by working together. The next few hours would test everything he'd taught them, everything they'd learned about themselves and each other. But as they moved toward their objective, Harrison was certain of one thing: whoever these attackers were, they had no idea what they were about to face. After all, there's nothing more dangerous than a Deathworlder with a plan, except a Deathworlder with a plan and a team of well-trained allies. Strength in differences. The central atrium of the Galactic Defense Academy was designed to showcase the unity and strength of the Federation, a soaring space of crystalline walls and floating platforms where beings from 1,000 worlds could gather and learn together. Now, eerily empty and echoing with distant sounds of combat, it felt like a killing ground. Harrison led his team across the exposed space, moving with deliberate purpose. KYRX's crystalline refraction field bent light around them, making them appear as little more than a heat shimmer in the air. Above, the Arathi team maintained their positions, their natural bioluminescence adjusted to match the emergency lighting. "Contact," Zalare whispered, her electromagnetic senses tingling. 3, no, for signatures approaching from the east corridor. "Hold position," Harrison commanded softly. "Let them pass." Nexus, ready for phase shift distraction if needed. The hostile patrol emerged from the corridor, shadowy figures that seemed to flicker in and out of reality. They moved with military precision, but Harrison noticed something odd about their formation. "They're favoring their right sides," he murmured. "The phase shift technology they're using, it's unstable. It's damaging their physical forms. Which means they're desperate," Pix observed from above. "They need to complete their mission quickly." Harrison nodded. Desperate enemies were dangerous, but they also made mistakes. "New plan. Instead of avoiding patrols, we're going to start picking them off." Quietly. His students looked at him with a mixture of alarm and determination. They'd trained for combat scenarios, but this would be their first real engagement. "Remember your strengths," Harrison continued. "KYRX, your crystalline form can disrupt their phase shift frequencies. Meridi team, your electromagnetic sensitivity can track them even when shifted. Arathi, your bioluminescence can be weaponized as a strobing effect. Together, we can turn their own technology against them." They encountered their first opportunity moments later, a pair of hostiles checking a security station. Harrison gave the signal, and his team moved like a well-oiled machine. The Arathi struck first, their bioluminescence pulsing in a disorienting pattern that confused the hostiles' phase shift regulators. As the enemies tried to solidify, KYRX projected a focused crystalline resonance that further disrupted their molecular cohesion. The Meridi team, tracking their electromagnetic signatures, guided Harrison and Nexus to the perfect strike points. In seconds, it was over. 2 more puddles of inert phase matter joined the growing collection across the academy. "Clean, efficient, and quiet," Harrison approved. "This is why we trained in combined operations. Every species has unique abilities. Together, they become something entirely new." They made steady progress toward the archives, each encounter refining their tactics. Harrison's students were learning to think like humans, adaptable, aggressive, and innovative, while using their own natural advantages to maximum effect. But as they approached their objective, Harrison's tactical instincts warned him that something was wrong. The resistance was getting lighter, not heavier as they'd expected. "They're letting us through," he realized aloud. "This whole attack, it's not just about the archives. It's a trap." "For who?" Zalare asked, then her scales shifted color in understanding. "For you. The first human instructor at the academy." Harrison nodded grimly. "They're not just after the species data. They want to prove that humans don't belong here, that we're too dangerous to be trusted with galactic knowledge." "Well, they're right about one thing," Nexus commented, their form rippling with what Harrison had learned to recognize as amusement. "You are dangerous. Just not in the way they think." "Sir," KYRX chimed in, their crystalline surface reflecting emergency lights like a prism. "I'm detecting a massive power buildup in the archives section. If they can't access the data, they'll destroy it," Harrison finished. "Along with anyone nearby." Scorched earth, another human tactic they've borrowed badly. His students looked to him expectantly, waiting for the plan. 3 weeks ago, they would have panicked at the thought of facing a suicide mission. Now they stood ready, each confident in their abilities and their teammates. "All right," Harrison said, a familiar glint in his eye that his students had learned meant something uniquely human was about to happen. "Time for Lesson 12, how to turn an enemy's trap against them." He quickly outlined his plan. It was audacious, probably insane, and relied on split-second timing between multiple species with radically different biological capabilities. In other words, it was exactly the kind of plan that had helped humanity survive on Earth. "That's impossible," Pick said when he finished. Then, with a very human grin, added, "Let's do it." Harrison felt a surge of pride. He'd taught them well, not just survival skills, but the human spirit of facing impossible odds with determination and even enthusiasm. "Remember," he said as they moved into position, "they think they understand what each species is capable of. They think they know our limitations, our weaknesses. But they don't understand the most important lesson I've taught you." "What's that, sir?" Zalare asked. Harrison's grin matched Pix's. "That limitations only exist until someone decides to break them. Now, let's show them what happens when you corner a Deathworlder and his team." A new understanding. The archive chamber was a fortress within a fortress, a hexagonal room surrounded by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. Now those same systems were being turned against it, building to an overload that would destroy centuries of accumulated knowledge. And at the center of it all stood a single figure, their phase-shifted form more stable than the others, watching monitors that showed Harrison's team approaching. "Right on schedule, Commander Harrison," the figure spoke as they entered, its voice distorted by phase fluctuations. "I must admit, you've exceeded expectations. Most impressive." "Glad we could entertain," Harrison replied, his team spreading out in practiced formation. "Though I have to say, this seems like a lot of effort just to prove a point about humans." The figure solidified slightly, revealing a humanoid shape wrapped in shifting shadows. "A point that needed to be made. Humans are too dangerous to be trusted with galactic knowledge. You're unpredictable, aggressive, violent. Innovative," Harrison interrupted. "Adaptable. And really good at spotting obvious traps." The figure paused. "Obvious? Well, yeah." Harrison shrugged. "I mean, attacking an academy full of trained warriors just to get to one human instructor. That's not a plan. That's a statement. You wanted to prove humans don't belong here. Instead, you proved exactly why we do." He gestured to his students. "Look at them. 3 weeks ago, they could barely handle Class 3 environmental conditions. Now they're taking down phase-shifted commandos and executing complex tactical maneuvers. Not because I taught them to be human, but because I taught them to be themselves, just better." "An interesting perspective," the figure replied. "But ultimately irrelevant. The charges are set. In 2 minutes, this chamber and everything in it will be destroyed. Your presence here changes nothing." Harrison smiled. "Actually, we've been here for 5 minutes already." The figure stiffened. "Impossible. My sensors can be fooled by a combination of crystalline refraction, phase shift interference, and electromagnetic disruption," Harrison finished. "While you were monologuing, my team was doing what they do best, working together." On cue, KYRX's crystalline field dropped, revealing the true positions of Harrison's students. The Arathi team had already disabled the upper charges. The Meridi had located and neutralized the power sources. Nexus had phase-shifted the critical data cores to safety. "See, that's the thing about humans," Harrison continued as his team efficiently secured the chamber. "We don't just survive by being stronger or tougher. We survive by adapting, by learning, by working with others. Yes, we come from a death world. Yes, we can be dangerous. But we use that strength to protect, to teach, to make things better." The figure tried to phase shift away, but found themselves trapped by an interlocking field of crystalline resonance and electromagnetic dampening, a technique Harrison's students had developed by combining their natural abilities. "Your own prejudice blinded you," Harrison said as Federation security forces finally arrived, their delayed response clearly part of the infiltrators' plan. "You were so focused on proving humans don't belong in the galaxy that you missed the most important lesson we bring to it: unity is stronger than division. Every time." In the aftermath, as the academy slowly returned to normal operations, Harrison found himself in Dean Vaxra's office. The dean's wings shimmered with an emotion Harrison couldn't quite read. "Your methods are unorthodox, Commander," Vaxra began. "But effective," Harrison added. "But effective," the dean agreed. "The Academy Oversight Board has reviewed the incident. They were particularly impressed by how your students combined their natural abilities in ways we had never considered possible." Harrison waited, keeping his expression neutral. "We would like to expand your teaching responsibilities," Vaxra continued. "A new department, focusing on cross-species tactical integration and survival strategies. It seems there is more to learn from Earth's experiences than we had realized." Harrison allowed himself a small smile. "Happy to help, Dean. Though I should warn you, my next lesson plan might be a little intense." Coming from a Deathworlder, Vaxra replied, with what Harrison swore was a hint of humor, "I would expect nothing less." As he left the office, Harrison found his students waiting. They stood straighter now, more confident, but it was more than that. They moved as a unit, each aware of the other's strengths and abilities, each ready to support their teammates. "Ready for tomorrow's lesson?" he asked. "What are we learning?" KYRX chimed eagerly. Harrison grinned. "How to survive a human camping trip." The collective groan from his students was music to his ears. They'd come so far, these beings from different worlds, different species, different evolutionary paths. They'd learned to survive, to fight, to work together. But more importantly, they'd learned the greatest lesson Earth had to teach. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't strength, or technology, or even weapons. It's unity. And that was something worth protecting, worth teaching, worth fighting for. As Harrison led his class toward their next adventure, he couldn't help but smile. The galaxy might not be ready for humanity's unique approach to problem solving, but they were definitely going to learn to appreciate it. After all, that's what teachers were for.